Welcome in to the 46th episode of the Southern Boys Sports Podcast. My name is Drew Hull, and today I'm going to be rolling alone. Usually I'm with my co-host Ben Clay. It's been like that for the past probably 20 episodes. Before that, it was me, him, and Beatty Noon. But today, Ben had some tie-ups, right? He had dinner. I believe he had to study for some big final exams tomorrow. So it is all good and dandy. It is just Drew Hull in the audience today talking some college football, and we are totally down for it. We do want to thank you for joining us here on the 46th episode, whether you're listening, whether you're watching. Make sure to follow us over on Twitter at so_boy_sports. Make sure to go follow us on Instagram at southern_boy_sports pod. We are climbing toward 300 followers over on Twitter. 16 more people. So go make sure follow over there. And we're trying to get to 100 over on Instagram. So thank you for all the support. And before we get to any college football talk, right? Before we get to any personal talk from me, any rambling, anything like that, we do have a new promo code to announce, and we are very, very excited about it. Make sure to now use code Southern Boys at laststandhats.com, at laststandhats over on Twitter. They do some amazing work in the state of Texas. They've got officially licensed gear, whether it's golf polos, hats, hoodies, crew necks, all the way from men's, women's, kids. They've got everything over there. If you're a fan of any Texas school, if you're a college football fan in general, college baseball, college golf, college softball, anything like that, they have got you covered. So use code Southern Boys to get 10% off of your purchase. We are very excited to team up with Last Stand Hats and everything they've got going in the industry. So that is the disclaimer for today's episode. If you're listening, after you finish listening, make sure head on over to laststandhats.com. We are very, very excited about teaming up with the good people over at Last Stand Hats. Now, before we get into the main event, the main special of this episode, if you clicked on episode 46, you may be saying, boys, what are we talking about right now, right? The Cellar, you see, I can't even say it. The Cellar Dweller special. What are we even talking about? It's the meat of the college football offseason. We got to come in. We got to talk about good stuff. Today, we're doing something just a little bit different. We're really excited about it. You're not going to see all this on the mainstream media sites. You're not going to see these teams covered on ESPN or other big media sites at this point. So we are here to fill you in on some of the worst teams in college football heading into the season, whether it's a roster preview, 2023 expectations, a little look ahead of their schedule. Can they take the jump from bad to decent to good, maybe? In a couple of teams' cases, we will see. But before we get to the Cellar Dweller special, the main event of today's episode, we've got some portal headlines. We've got some college football headlines. We've got a lot to get to. So let's talk about Shane Hooks. Coming over from Jackson State. A 750-yard receiver with 10 touchdowns in last season for Jackson State. Auburn is now the number 2 transfer portal class in all of college football via 24/7. This is a huge class from Hugh Freeze. Not only do you get a guy in Peyton Thorne, who's going to come in, probably be your starting quarterback, you get 2 guys coming over from North Texas who are going to play wide receiver and linebacker for you. You get another transfer wide receiver coming over from Ohio State, which seems to be wide receiver U the past couple of years, putting out some guys into the league. Caleb Burton comes over to Auburn. Hugh Freeze is building something that I haven't seen Hugh Freeze really build or Auburn build in a little minute, right? Getting a guy in Shane Hooks to put beside Jarquez Hunter or to put beside Peyton Thorne or Caleb Burton or the other receivers. They lost Landon King to Utah earlier in the cycle, and now they've got a guy to come in. He doesn't have to catch for 800 yards like he did last year. He caught 64 balls at Jackson State. Is that going to happen again? Not very likely, right? Not very likely, but a lot of commitments for Hugh Freeze, a lot of things rolling in the right direction. Me and Ben have talked about it all offseason, all past couple of podcasts. It's going to be a huge offseason for Hugh Freeze and Auburn. Right? It's going to be a huge offseason to see if they can get things implemented, if Peyton Thorne can come in and be the difference maker we think he's going to be, whether that's in fall camp, whether that's early on in the season as we start creeping toward August, September, week 1, week 2, and all that good stuff. Going to be fun, right? Shane Hooks, huge commitment for Auburn. He's been kind of whispered to go to Auburn. So we are recording in the timely manner to announce that commitment. Now let's talk about another transfer in the college football world. That is Prince Kollie. He's a former four-star from Notre Dame. He's headed to Clark Lee and the Vanderbilt Commodores. I've interacted with a couple of Vanderbilt accounts on Twitter. Really, really nice. Obviously, we had Billy Derrick on, I think, one of the first ever episodes of the Southern Boy Sports podcast. So I keep in touch with the Door Report, keep in touch with Billy Derrick, Will Byram, all the good people over at the Door Report. They're really excited about this commitment. I remember tweeting out when it was a crystal ball from a couple Twitter accounts, about where Kali may land. I was saying this could be Anthony Orji's, maybe not replacement. I don't love that word, but could be a guy who comes in, is a good middle linebacker, outside linebacker, does what Clark Lee needs him to do, right? And puts Vanderbilt in a position to have another leading tackler, another 50, 60 tackle a season guy like an Anthony Orji, who's obviously off to the league. We're going to talk about Vanderbilt later in the episode. Unfortunately, Vanderbilt fans, they are on the Cellar Dweller special. So no doubt about it. It is an absolutely phenomenal get for Vanderbilt. Again, a former four-star who committed to play for Notre Dame. Now he's going over to play in the SEC, play for Vanderbilt. And we are going, again, to touch on the Commodores as we get later into episode 46. Now, lastly, the big headline that's been sweeping the college football world. We've seen it on mainstream media outlets. We've seen it across every college football show imaginable the past couple of days. We're going to hop on this one bandwagon this one time for you guys. It is the ACC drama. Everything that's been going down in the ACC. Now, it's been a busy couple of days, and not even a busy couple of days, a busy couple of months on months, close to a year now since we had that, kind of seismic wave of teams wanting to leave the Big Ten, wanting to leave the Pac-12. UCLA and USC off to the Big Ten. Texas and OU head over to the SEC. We heard ramblings of maybe adding a Florida State, a Clemson, and North Carolina, teams who may want out of the ACC. Now, that's kind of been coming back, creeping back in, right? You go to bed at night, oh, we got the ACC, we're good. Maybe not thinking about it even. You wake up, it's seeping right under your door, right? It's seeping in, not enough to be really visible, but enough to kind of start smelling it, right? Smelling it in the air that maybe the ACC could be breaking up. Now, here are the teams that have kind of wanted out, right? We're going to talk about one of these teams. That's Virginia Tech. Brent Pry's team wants out. Virginia, NC State, Clemson, North Carolina, Florida State, Miami. Those are the teams who went out. Louisville has also been thrown into the mix. Now, I think the one exception for a pretty subpar team as of late who may get the opportunity to go play in a big power conference, whether it's the Big Ten, because geography is out of the window at this point. Rip your map up, throw it into the wind, because it does not matter at this particular point. We want these commissioners, these presidents of the universities, as athletic directors, everybody in the athletic program, they want money, right? That is well known. They want money. So if the SEC reaches out to Miami and says, hey, we want the U, right? We want the U. We want all these great players, this great alumni, an atmosphere and a team, prestige that everyone's going to recognize. The money will be there, right? Miami's got the money. The SEC's got the money. And it's not always about geography. It's not always going to be about who's the best fit, who's the best team, because I think the best team's either Florida State or Clemson. We're going to see those two duel this season, but I think those are the best fit. I think those are the best two fit to make that jump to the SEC, whether it is Clemson or Florida State. Clemson obviously has a rival in the SEC, and that's South Carolina. Florida State has a rival in the SEC, and that's Florida. So you're going to be continuing to play those rivalry games. They're going to become even bigger rivalry games if these two teams do choose the SEC, and if they do leave the ACC. It's $100-something million to even leave the ACC. So hold it lightly. Hold it like a baby bird that these teams are even leaving. But there are rumblings. There are, the Virginia Techs, the NC States, and the Virginias of the world who haven't even come to be double-digit win teams in the ACC, and they won out, right? So we're going to see how it goes. I think it's going to be a lot more money discussions, a lot more TV deal discussions like we've been getting with the Pac-12, the Big 12. Are they going to break up? Is SMU and San Diego State going to be in? All these conference realignment things that me and Ben have kind of waited to talk about until whether it's, June, July, maybe even the beginning of August, as we get, as we search for more content, as we continue to try and cover things over the offseason. those are the things that we want to talk about, right? The ACC realignment, the Big 12 and the Pac 12. So we've been holding off on that, but headline this big, we could not hold off. We could hold off on this next thing, and that's the Cellar Dweller Special, people. The first annual Cellar Dweller Special. Me and Ben workshopped this one a little bit before we knew Ben was going to be unavailable for this week's podcast, but nonetheless, I'm here to break it down. We've got 5 of the teams that have kind of stayed at the bottom of their respective conferences for the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and they're trying to get out, right? What is the expectations? What are the goals? How are they going to get out? Talk about some key players, talk about, whatever. It should be a lot of fun. Now, it's been a loaded first 10 minutes of the podcast. Loaded. But we've got the Cellar Dweller Special to jump into. Before we get into it, follow our socials at @so_boy_sports on Twitter, at @southern_boy_sports pod on Instagram. You want to make sure, give us a 5-star review over there on Spotify. Go subscribe, leave us a like over on YouTube. We're trying to build that YouTube following. We get a lot of views. A lot of people who are watching aren't subscribed at this point, and that's not how we want it. We want everyone out there subscribed, watching all of our videos, and we do appreciate the people who have been tuning in, the good people tuning in over on YouTube for sure. Now, it's been a long week. It's been a long week already, and it's only a Monday. So if you're listening to this on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if you're a student in high school, you're going through final exams like me and Ben, whether you're a college student, you're moving out of your dorms and all that, it's been a loaded Monday. So, loaded Monday. If you're listening on Tuesday, we thank you. Wednesday, we thank you. Thursday, Friday, same thing. Take a deep breath. Tune into the Southern Boy Sports Podcast. Let us relieve your stress of the past couple of days, whether it's final exams, chores, household items, taking care of the kids, taking care of some laptop problems like I've been dealing with. Just calm down. We've got the Cellar Dweller Special coming your way. Let's get into it. Northwestern fans, we do apologize. We had to throw you in here. A 1-11 season in 2022-2023. You had one win. It was in conference. I'll give you that. It was a conference win in Nebraska, not in Nebraska, in Dublin, Ireland, over the Nebraska Cornhuskers. This team's 33-39 since 2017 with 3 bowl game appearances. A losing record in the past 6 years isn't ideal. 3 bowl games out of the past 6 years isn't bad, really. It honestly isn't terrible. You've got a coach in Pat Fitzgerald, who's absolutely phenomenal. I love Pat Fitzgerald. Love him. Love him to death. I've been coaching at Northwestern since 2001. He played linebacker over at Northwestern. He's got that program in the duffel bag. He's got him in the duffel bag. The fans are on board. I think the athletic directory is on board. From what I've heard, Northwestern fans, not really live on Twitter, I will say that much, but they've seemed to be okay with Pat Fitzgerald. So maybe he's the guy to do it. He was a great linebacker. He's a 2-time Bronco Nagurski Award winner. He's produced some dudes out of Northwestern. One of those guys, Evan Hull, as of late, the running back, he heads off to the Indianapolis Colts. That's a 900-yard rusher. Carried in 5 touchdowns. Now he's a 5th-round pick. He's able to produce that NFL talent. Northwestern is a team playing in not only a pretty good Big Ten, right? You got 2 college football playoff contenders, maybe 3 if you want to throw Penn State in there. You're playing against teams who, it's tough, right? It's not easy to come in and compete. That being said, you're in the West. You're in the Big Ten West. You got the opportunity to go out and play in Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa, and Nebraska. You don't have to go in and play Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. You don't throw Michigan State in there as of late, right? You're not going to have to play those teams and beat those teams out to make a conference championship appearance. So the goal for Northwestern is to continue to climb that ladder. Pat Fitzgerald's been here for quite a while. He's been on staff since 2001, right? He's had 10 bowl appearances since he was the head coach in 2006. Northwestern isn't a bad football program in general. Right, you want to date back 20, 30, 40 years. They're not a terrible college football program. Northwestern has as many bowl appearances in the past 17 years as Vanderbilt has of all time. 10. So it's not like this team is completely garbage. They're in the Cellar Dweller. They're a Cellar Dweller at the beginning of 2023. I'd love for them to prove me wrong. Now, you got 3 key pieces gone on offense this season. That's Ryan Helinski, that's Peter Skoronski, and that's Evan Hull. Obviously, Peter Skoronski a top 15 pick in this year's draft to the Tennessee Titans. If Ben was on the show, we could break it down, maybe talk a little Titans, sneak some NFL in there. But I digress. They have the last rated transfer class per 24/7. They don't bring a lot of guys in to replace the veteran leadership of Peter Skoronski. Ryan Helinski had a bad season, but you don't get a veteran guy with a lot of experience to go in and replace him. Maybe that's Ben Bryant, right? Maybe that is Ben Bryant. Evan Hull, a leader, 221 carries in 2022. He's a workhorse. He was a dog. So now you have those three players gone. You bring in A.J. Henning from Michigan, who was mostly a return man, right? Had 200 yards receiving, 25 receptions in his Michigan career. You bring in Ben Bryant to be your QB1. I don't think there's a lot of questions about that. I think you bring Ben Bryant in, right? 2,700 yards, 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He has a solid get from Cincinnati, whose team is absolutely falling apart. Scott Satterfield, he didn't want to stick around since Luke Fickell wasn't there, so he's playing Big Ten ball. He'll be playing Luke Fickell, his former head coach. He's playing Big Ten ball. So Northwestern, they're going to have to jump in. They're going to have to accumulate Ben Bryant to the Big Ten style of play, to Big Ten football. That's going to be step number one. They also bring in Cam Johnson, who's a veteran receiver. I think he had a 4 or 5 year career. He still has a couple of years left of eligibility, whether it's injuries, COVID, all that good stuff. 1,700 yards career receiving over at Arizona State. So that's 2 receivers that you bring in to surround Ben Bryant, right? That's 2 receivers. You got Cam Porter, who's a returning running back. You got 2 or 3 other guys behind him in the backfield. Northwestern is a team, I don't know how to describe them, except they're like hummus. Nebraska is like hummus. It's good. It's good every once in a while, right? It's good every once in a while. If you sit there and you eat hummus, spoonfuls of hummus over and over and over again, I don't think hummus is going to taste very good to you. Hummus can be good. You tried it a long time ago. It was pretty good, but you don't want to continue to eat it. It'll make you sick. That's what Nebraska is like. Northwestern is like. Northwestern, they had their years, right? They were really good a lot of years ago. They were good when Pat Fitzgerald was there. They were good in the mid-2010s. They had 8, 9 win, 10 win seasons even. So they've got to get back to doing that. They got to get back to winning these Big Ten West games. That you can't drop Big Ten West games to a Rutgers, to a Nebraska, and Illinois or Purdue this season. You've got to win those games. You have to. If you want to make a bowl, you got to beat UTEP, you got to beat Rutgers, you got to beat Howard, Nebraska, Illinois, and Purdue. Very, very winnable games. And again, a team like this where you bring in a new QB, you bring in surrounding pieces on defense and offense, right? It's just going to be a lot of how do they play together? How do they mesh together? Even though you've got the same regime, the same scheme, the same head coach, how is Ben Bryant going to adjust to Big Ten football? How is he going to adjust to Pat Fitzgerald's scheme? How is Cam Porter going to adjust to being the workhorse, being the RB1, right? He's going to have to be the guy to get 200 carries, 190, 180, 170 carries in a season, right? Instead of those, the minimal amount of carries in 2022, 2023. So Northwestern is all about stepping up. Who's going to step up? Is Ben Bryant going to be that guy? Is he going to be a guy that a lot of people are like, okay, this could be a late round pick. This guy's really good. He's going to throw for 25 touchdowns, keep the interceptions at a low rate, throw for a good amount of yards, find his guys when he's open, solid QB. That's all you need if you're Pat Fitzgerald to go out and win 5, 6, 7 games maybe here in 2023. So let me read you the schedule. Northwestern Wildcat fans, listen up. You visit Rutgers. You are home against UTEP. Then you visit Duke. You got back-to-back home games against Minnesota, Penn State, and Howard. You take a bye. You visit Nebraska. You're home against Maryland and Iowa. Then you visit Wisconsin. And you're home against Purdue and at Illinois. So you have to visit Nebraska. You have to visit Illinois, Wisconsin, and Rutgers. And Duke. So you avoid Penn State. Big W right there. You even avoid Iowa, who can get rowdy sometimes. You avoid Illinois. You got to play at Camp Randall. Wisconsin, that's a tough environment, but I will say a lot of winnable games in there. A lot of winnable games. I read off those 6 games that you need to win to get bowl eligible. If you didn't hear me, skip back 15, 30, 45 seconds if you're listening. Same thing. Use a little scrub bar down there on YouTube. But if you did hear me, now you understand that it's not out of proportion for Nebraska to come in here and win 6 games in 2023. The good thing that saves Nebraska, that's not true for a lot of these teams. that we're going to talk about down this list, these 4 other teams, before I finish up with the Northwestern. I've butchered that so many times. I probably called them Nebraska like 8 times. So bear with me. They are at an advantage to a team like a Vanderbilt or a couple other teams that we're going to touch on. Not going to spoil it for you. But you don't have to go in and play the big bad wolves of your conference. You don't have to play Penn State, right? You're not having to play Ohio State, Michigan, right? Yeah, you have to play Wisconsin, but they still got a lot to prove, right? You get them later in the season, which sucks, but you got a Purdue who's vulnerable after losing their QB1. See how Hudson Card does. Illinois after losing a couple pieces like a Chase Brown, like a Sydney, like a Devin Witherspoon, like other pieces in that Illinois secondary, which made them great, right? A lot of opportunities to jump on if you're Pat Fitzgerald Northwestern. Pat Fitzgerald knows how to win. We'll see if Ben Bryant can follow suit. We'll see if Cam Porter can step up. We'll see if this defense can hold suit. Need someone to step up for Peter Skoronski as well. Now, let's move on. Our next team of the night. Let me take a sip here. Getting parched. All right. Next team of the night. The Vanderbilt Commodores. I wrote down here on my notes. I did my notes at a neutral location this past week, and I kind of liked it. I won't disclose what neutral location here in Nashville it was, but it's a very popular coffee joint with free Wi-Fi, pretty good food, pretty nice workers. That's all I'll say. Really nice spot if you want to get some work done. Free Wi-Fi. Anyways, I digress. I did this there, and I really did start thinking about it. I started staring off into space while I was thinking about the question I'm about to rhetorically ask you because, hey, Ben's not on the show today. Rhetorical question that I'm going to answer. I'll give you a couple seconds. How is Vanderbilt going to compete in a new SEC with a team like Texas and with a team like in Oklahoma? I'll give you some time. Just think about that. Answer it back to yourself. How is a team like Vanderbilt going to come in and compete in a new SEC with Texas and Oklahoma? How are they going to do it? I'm not completely sure. I don't know the question to that answer, but I'll tell you what. The answer to that question, but I'll tell you what, a 4-star quarterback in this past cycle does help you. That's A.J. Swan. Well built. He can get out and run. He only threw two interceptions, 10 touchdowns, right, last season, and only 9 appearances. But he slung it as a true freshman, right? I think Clark Lee is the right man for the job. Clip this. Do whatever you want. If Clark Lee doesn't succeed at Vanderbilt, I'm on board with all the Vandy fans who say that Clark Lee is your man. 7-17 in the past 3 years. It does not matter. I like Clark Lee. And you can see this Tennessee banner in the background if you're watching on YouTube. I'm wearing a Tennessee hat right now. I'm a diehard Vol fan. And I'm telling you, I think Clark Lee is the guy to get it done. Right? You went 5-7 in 2023, 2022, 2023. Took a step forward, right? You won 2 SEC games. That's Florida. That's Kentucky, right? Florida and Kentucky were 2 SEC wins. That is a step in the right direction if you're Clark Lee. You saw the Vanderbilt fans get really, really excited about that. You saw college football fans say, okay, hey, maybe Vanderbilt is here to play. Maybe they're here to compete in the SEC, right? So the question of do I think they're going to go out and beat Texas and Oklahoma in the next 2 or 3 years? Probably not, right? Probably not. But all it takes is a couple SEC wins. The transfer portal is your friend. You bring in Prince Colley, right? Like I just said, from Notre Dame. You bring in Niger Forquerin from GVSU. You bring in Anis DeCosmo from Stanford. All 3 defensive transfers, right? And you continue to develop. I think Clark Lee's done a phenomenal job developing guys. Will Shepard, excellently developed. If you can get a guy in A.J. Swan's ear, develop into a second, third, maybe even first-round talent by the time he's done at Vanderbilt, because you got 2-3 more years of him, I think that could be your road to success. If you get one QB in here to come in here and succeed, a 4-star quarterback, you get this offense going, you get a really good defense, the recruits will start rolling in. We talked about it in episode 44. If you haven't listened to that one, go back after you listen here to the Cellar Dweller special and go check out episode 44 with Josh Newberg. Because we talked about it. All it takes is that one big QB recruit to kind of make a ripple effect, right? I listened to J.D. Pickell. Shout out to him. Shout out to On3. He was talking about the ripple effect that Dylan Raiola may create at Georgia in Athens. I think that's all it takes for Vanderbilt. Create an absolute dog out of A.J. Swan and continue to produce solid running backs. Keyshawn Vaughn. I understand that wasn't under Clark Lee, but that was a solid back. Went on to play in the NFL. Ray Davis transferred out, but he was a solid back. He'll probably go on to play in the NFL as a later round draft pick. Right? So now you've got Patrick Smith. You got Chase Gillespie. You've got guys that are going to be able to step up for you, continue to produce those solid backs, and continue to bring in solid recruiting classes. Try and sneak in the top 25 a few times. You're in a hotbed, right? You're in Nashville, Tennessee. You can go out. You can get guys from Memphis. You can get guys from Marietta, Georgia, or IMG Academy if you really start winning. So it's going to take this season. I think this is a huge swing year. Huge swing year. If you can win 6-7 games this season, put yourself on the map of bowl eligibility, get out of the cellar, Don't be on the 2024 edition of the Cellar Dweller Special. I think you're moving in the right direction. Right? Here's the schedule. I'll read off the schedule of the Vanderbilt Commodores for you listening. You got Hawaii at home in week 0. You got Alabama A&M, an FCS opponent at home. You visit 2 Wake Forest and UNLV to end off your out-of-conference schedule. But then you got Kentucky at home, Missouri at home. Then you visit Florida. Great 3-game stretch. You go in between the hedges. No, you don't. You stay home against Georgia. You get a bye week. At Ole Miss, home against Auburn. At South Carolina, bye week at Tennessee. I honestly, if Vanderbilt comes out of the gate and starts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 0, or a 6-1, I think this could be a story that a lot of people don't see coming. I'll read it out for you. Clip me if I'm wrong, make fun of me if I'm wrong, but I could honestly see this happen. Hawaii is a win. Alabama A&M is a win. You sneak a win against a sneaky bad Wake Forest team that loses Sam Hartman and Perry. You win that game on the road. You go to Allegiant Stadium and beat UNLV, and then you handle Kentucky and Missouri at home. They're 6-0. They're 6-0. There's Twitter, Vandy Twitter going crazy. There's SEC Twitter continuing to chatter. They're the main media outlets coming in and saying, okay, is Vanderbilt legit? Like, they're 6-0. I mean, I know that's not really crazy, but 6-0, they're already bowl eligible. Then you see ESPN Sports Center posting Vanderbilt bowl eligible for the first time in 2018, and it's only been 6 games. If you start that hot, which I think is possible, just because of the schedule that you start off with is so favorable, you're in a good spot. Now, the back half of your schedule gets difficult. At Florida, they're not a great team. They got shaky quarterback room, but it's not a gimme. Definitely not a gimme. It's going to be a huge competition game in the swamp. Georgia is a loss. Bye week. You go at Ole Miss. Tough game. Tough SEC West opponent. Home against Auburn. We'll see how they're playing. At South Carolina. Bye week at Tennessee. So you got to go to Willie B. You got to go to Neyland Stadium, 2 really tough road environments. I don't think you get either one of those games done. Hopefully you can take a step in the right direction with, competitiveness, I guess you could call it. I don't think you beat Tennessee, South Carolina, or Ole Miss, bearing an upset, but I think you could sneak Florida. Like I said, I think you could get off to a really hot 6-1, 6-0, 7-0 start and be in that national chatter, right? Be in that national news that a lot of people, want to be in. So if I had to give you a 2023 expectation, Vanderbilt fans, if you're tuning in, thank you. If I had to give you a 2023 expectation, they need to continue to win some SEC games. If they can snag 2 conference games again this year, maybe win 3 out of the 4 out of conference games, go in and win 5, 6, 7 games again, the doors will be just okay. It's not a bad thing to go 5-7. You got a top 50 recruiting class in 2024. You got plenty of time to build a 7, 8, 9 win program. You can't lose to Bama A&M, Hawaii, or UNLV. And if you tuned into episode 45, that was our win-loss lock, virtual lock. I had Vanderbilt as a virtual lock to overcome the 3-win total set by DraftKings. So I need them to go out and win an SEC game or upset Wake Forest on the road. We're going to see. I like Vanderbilt. I'm a little higher on them as a compete now program than a lot of these other schools and names that I've got on my note sheet here in front of me. But that's all on Vanderbilt. Tell me if I'm crazy saying they could start off hot. A lot of people may call me crazy, except my guy Chris at VandyChris5 on Twitter. That's my boy, Vanderbilt fan for life. Take a sip. Woo. We're moving right ahead, people. Next Cellar Dweller of the Cellar Dweller Special 2023 edition, the California Golden Bears. Let's take a trip to the Pac-12. Let's go out west, people. Nashville, Tennessee show. Let's go to Cal. Let's see what's going on over here. Because I'll tell you right now, I don't think the people here at Southern Boys Sports have ever talked about Cal in a podcast episode. First time for everything. Now, Cal was 4-8, 2-7 in the Pac-12 in 2022. They've got a head coach in Justin Wilcox, who was a former DB at Cal in the 90s. Now he's in his 7th year. He's a DB at Oregon. He's his 7th year at Cal. Losing overall record, 30-36. I'm familiar with his name because he was at Tennessee as a defensive coordinator. He was at USC and Wisconsin as a defensive coordinator as well. So he's a defensive coach, right? When doing the research for this episode, when doing my due diligence for episode 46 here, I went to a couple Cal message boards, and you see a lot of people mad. Justin Wilcox is supposed to be a defensive coach. He played in the secondary, right? You know, he's supposed to be that guy who doesn't give up a lot of points, and they gave up a ton of points in 2022. A ton. A lot of people are saying that's unacceptable, and I agree. We'll get to that in just a little bit, scheme-wise, just a little bit. Hold with me. But the third coach tonight that we've talked about who's played in college before coaching, and not the only one we'll talk about tonight. 36 points given up per game last season. They scored 24 and gave up 36. Excuse me. They scored 24 and gave up 28. Still, you're at a -4 margin. That's a terrible margin. You're not going to win ball games doing that. I can tell you that much. As a Cal fan, I would be outraged. But let's talk about the bright spot of this team. We'll get back to the defense. I got a couple impact transfers coming in that I want you to get familiar with. This is what this episode is for. Get familiar with some teams you may not get familiar with otherwise, unless you listen to the Cellar Dweller special. Key player, Jaden Ott. 170 carries, 900 yards, 8 touchdowns in 2022. And let me tell you something. He's only a true freshman. A true freshman. Had a 200-yard plus game against Arizona. I can't remember the exact number, but it was plus 200 yards as a true freshman. Right? He's got a lot more to do. He's got a lot more that I think he can do, but I think he could be the key piece. I think they could really run the offense through him this season. Because you got a quarterback in Sam Jackson V, who comes over from TCU. He followed Sonny Dykes over to TCU and jumped back over here to Cal. Jack Plummer's gone to Louisville. That's a 3,000-yard season with 21 touchdowns that you got to follow up. Right? He's just not experienced. Sam Jackson V. He's just not experienced. About 5'11", 185 coming out of high school. Just haven't seen him, right? Really haven't seen him. He was stuck behind Max Duggan, Chandler Morris over at TCU. He was a third string, right? He's got a great arm. He can get out and run. He's got what it takes to be a pretty good dual threat quarterback, right? That's what he was labeled coming out of high school. But there's not a lot of film to go off of. There's not a lot of stats to go off of. Not a lot of things you can do, right? They bring back 2 of their top 3 receivers here. They bring in a guy from Illinois, Brian Hightower, who was a 400-yard receiver. He's a senior. So a lot of experience coming into the transfer portal. Like I said, we'll get to some defensive additions here in just a minute. Right? You bring in 2 playmakers on defense. Here's that minute I've been referring to that we're going to talk about the defensive impact players. 2 playmakers in the secondary. That's Noel Williams, the cornerback from UNLV, and Patrick McMorris, the safety from San Diego State. They could patch a terrible defense that gave up a ton of points with a defensive-minded head coach. Right? That can't happen under Wilcox. They snagged Florida transfer linebacker David Reese. He had a 5-year career at Florida. He's an SEC experienced player, got a lot of experience under some pretty good defensive coaches. Todd Grantham. But pretty big shoes to fill this season for Sam Jackson V. That's my biggest takeaway. Huge shoes to fill for the young man, the transfer from TCU. 268 pass yards per game last season from Jack Plummer, who's now a Louisville Cardinal. That's 55th in college football. Not bad, right? Not terrible. 55th in college football will probably get you bowl eligibility. And if you're a Cal Golden Bear fan, Cal Golden Bear alum, coach, player, student, doesn't matter. You'll take bowl eligibility at this particular point. So, biggest takeaway, Jaden Ott needs to continue to be a dog. The defense needs to get patched up, right? Like I said, you get Noel Williams to come in and Patrick McMorris from the group of 5 level, plus a very, very experienced linebacker from Florida and David Reese. So, it's doable. I think they're going to struggle just a little bit this year just because of the inexperience. You're expecting guys from the Group of 5 level to come in, step up, play like they're in the Pac-12, which is a really stacked conference this year. It's going to take a lot of getting used to if you're a Cal, right? Here's the schedule, and this is why I think it's going to be so tough for them. You're at North Texas, and you're going to Denton. You're home against Auburn and Idaho, back-to-back games at home. You go to Washington. Then you're home against Arizona State and Oregon State. You visit Utah, stay home against USC, visit Oregon. You're home against Wazoo, and you visit UCLA. So you've got the tougher teams in the Pac-12. They're no joke, right? The Pac-12, no joke. You got tough games against UCLA, Washington, Oregon State, Utah, USC, and Oregon. Those teams combined for 61 total wins between 6 teams. Those 6 teams were the top 6 teams in the entire Pac-12 last season. So you have to play the top 6 finishers in the Pac-12. That's why it's so tough when the Pac-12 is good. Because it's 12 teams. If the top 6 are good, it's going to be a tough season for the bottom 6. If Colorado turns out to be a real problem, if Arizona State under Kenny Dillingham gets pretty good, wins 7 or 8 games, this is going to be a rough season for California, so you better hope that doesn't happen. You don't have to play Colorado, but you do have Arizona State, right? You do have Arizona State. So it's a tough Pac-12. It's an inexperienced offense for sure. I think Jaden Ott playing as a true freshman was great for him just because you get to see Pac-12 defenses. You get to see, what you're going to be playing against for the next 3 years, bearing he enters the transfer portal. So Cal might be in the worst. I take that back. The next team we're going to talk about, who's also in the Pac-12, spoiler alert, might be the worst team in the worst situation that we're going to talk about. I just went by Goodwill the other day and saw a California Golden Bears t-shirt, an extra large, maybe just an extra large, sitting on the rack for $199. I would say that basically sums up where the program's at right now. I gave it to my girlfriend. So, yeah. Let's go to the 2023 expectations for this team. The goals, the expectations, kind of the overall what to expect from Cal. If you're just a casual college football fan, or if you're a fan of the Alabama Crimson Tide, you don't really branch in to the bottom teams of the Pac-12. It's been almost a decade under Justin Wilcox. The defense has to clean it up, right? You get 3 big transfers on defense. I think you've got to let the fast-paced offense cook, right? Let them cook. If you see the memes on Twitter, see the memes on YouTube, whatever, TikTok, let them cook. The offense is going to have to be fast-paced. You bring back Hunter. You bring in Hightower. If Sam Davis can get his legs underneath him, I think he could be a very, very good dual-threat quarterback. Like I said, just going to have to see him get some experience under his belt. So let them cook. Do your job. Get off the field. Let the offense go to work. Score enough points to beat the other team. That's the goal of football, right? That's the goal of football. You got a deep wide receiver room. You got to win 4 or 5 games this year, and Justin Wilcox has to show improvement. Now, that improvement doesn't have to be Cal jumps from 4 wins to 8 wins or 7 wins or even bowl eligibility, right? But if you develop Sam Jackson, you develop Jaden Ott some more, maybe be an all Pac-12 first team, second team running back because the door's open. Marshawn Lloyd at USC is some dang good competition. But Wilcox is going to have to take a step forward, or I think he is. If not, he's not already on the hot seat. The hot seat's going to get a little bit hotter. Crank up the temperature. Crank it up. Now, if he goes out, wins 6 games, wins 5 games, and makes a really good game out of an Oregon State game, or takes Washington down to the wire, or has some really promising traits out of this season, maybe 1 more year. But it's been 7 years, Cal fans. It's been 7 years. Get out of the cellar. Get out of the cellar dweller special episode, right? Get out. 4 or 5 wins and a huge step up. Can they utilize the transfer portal? Can they recruit? They're in a recruiting hotbed. The state of California, recruiting hotbed. Get on it. They got to take that step up. Next step up for sure. Let's move on. Let's stay in the Pac-12. I gave you a little spoiler alert. Maybe you saw it coming. Maybe you didn't. But if you didn't, it's on your screen. If you're listening, it's Stanford. It's Stanford. It's a new regime. That's the most important thing. That's what I have here on my note sheet. Most important thing is that it is a new regime. Take it easy on Troy Taylor. He's coming over from an FCS program in Sacramento State, who was pretty solid, right? Nothing terrible. Don't really keep up with FCS ball too much. That's why I rely on FCS Nation Radio over on Twitter. Check him out. Really good account. Nothing with him. I love Stone Labanowitz. It's my guy. Had him on one of my old podcasts. Love the dude. but they're how I keep up with the FCS. So, yeah, Troy Taylor, he was a quarterback coach, offensive coordinator at Utah, wide receiver coach at Cal in the 90s. He's got the Pac-12 experience. He's got the West Coast experience for sure, coming from Sacramento State. Now, like I said, Cal is maybe in the worst position out of all of these teams just because, number one, they don't expect a ton, right? And I don't say that in a negative fashion. I think everyone wants to win. I think Stanford students want their football team to win. I think the athletic director would love if the football team won 10 games in a season. When they had Christian McCaffrey and made the Rose Bowl, I'm sure a lot of people like that. But the expectations are lowered for Stanford football. Number one, because you're under a new coach. Number two, because when you have to have in between a 3.3 and a 3.5 GPA to compete in athletics at Stanford, it's tough, right? It's tough because they can just go to Oregon and go play immediately, or they can go play at Texas or Alabama or Georgia, or they can stay within the Pac-12 at Colorado or something like that. They don't have to come to Stanford. Why would they come to Stanford? If they have a 3.0 GPA and they can't get into play athletics or 2.9, 2.8, which is NCAA eligible, go to Colorado. Go play for Prime, right? Go to USC. Go to these more appealing locations. That's why it's so tough for Stanford. I'm speaking the obvious juice right now. Everyone knows that. If you're listening to this show, you know it's hard to get into Stanford. It's hard to go play ball at Stanford. Talk about the same thing with Caleb Love, who's going to go to Michigan, and his grades weren't good enough. Right now, he had a decommit and re-entered the transfer portal. So it's a lot. It's tough. It is tough, right? But it's tough to recruit those hotbeds when you can't really, you can't really get them, right? You can't even get the kids. So you've got a starting quarterback returning. Let's talk about the good parts, kind of the pluses of Stanford. Been dogging on them enough. You got Ari Patu coming back. He's 6'4", college junior. He played high school ball at Folsom. I did some digging this episode, man. I have some nice, nifty stats. He played his high school ball at Folsom High School, which is the same high school Troy Taylor coached at with two stints, 2002 to 2004 and 2012 to 2015. So a little nugget of information here in episode 46, because we don't have trivia with Ben. We don't have our episode's worth of trivia, so we had to go to a little stat. But yeah, Patu hasn't got a lot of Patu hasn't got a lot of rip. 6 for 9, 65 yards and 2 touchdowns in 4 games played last year. Didn't get a ton of reps, obviously, with Tanner McKee, who went to the Philadelphia Eagles. He was an NFL talent, probably the best player on that roster last season. So didn't really get a ton of time. You bring in Justin Lamson, who comes over from Syracuse. He could cause some conflict. He's a 3-star in this 2023 transfer portal cycle. So maybe he comes in, mixes it up a little bit, makes a QB controversy for Troy Taylor in year 1. But I think Ari Patu returning, understanding the scheme, being close with E.J. Smith, who is the running back this season for the Cardinal, I think that's the right move. Let's talk about E.J. Smith, the aforementioned running back, right? The aforementioned running back, obviously the son of Emmitt Smith, a key returner at running back. 30 carries, 206 yards, 3 touchdowns, but past the stats, he's a great running back. Past the stats, he's going to be a guy who's going to come in and click with Ari Patu, or maybe even the transfer QB in Justin Lamson, right? I think Troy Taylor's got a team player in E.J. Smith. I think he's got a guy who's potential to jump up to an all Pac-12 honorable mention or all second team, third team player this season if his potential is put to worth, right? If his potential is maxed to 100%, or if he's getting a ton of carries this season, 140, 150, even 170, 80, right? They're going to come in, they're going to pound the rock with him. I think he's a viable, great, solid option in the backfield for Stanford. I think he's great. Right? Now, he is a great returner, right? Hopefully he can make that leap in 2023 to the all-conference level, but you only returned 6 starters. You're going to need a ton of key players from last year's second, third team, or a second team on another Power 5 or Group of 5 school to make that jump to a Pac-12 starter in one offseason, one spring ball season, one fall ball season, one fall camp, spring camp season. You need everyone to get in the weight room. You need everyone to get bigger, faster, stronger, understand the offense, understand the defense. A new scheme, nonetheless. Talking about second and third teamers from last season stepping up into a starting role with a new head coach. It's tough to do. It's tough to do, right? It's tough to do. That's why I think a lot of people should cut this team some slack. They've got 5 commits in the 2024 class, 55th ranked, 73rd ranked transfer portal class. You've got a couple guys, 4 commits in the transfer portal who may be able to come in and make a little bit of a difference. A couple of defenders, a couple guys out wide as well. It's just going to be a lot of unknowns for Stanford. New head coach, you're going to expect a lot of guys to step up, those sophomores to become juniors and play senior roles. It's going to be a lot of that, a lot of stretching this team thin. If you get my vibe, right? Catch my vibe. Now, let's go to Stanford's schedule. Let's talk about it. They visit Hawaii and USC back-to-back weeks to start off the season. Great venues, awesome scenery. I will say that's going to be some very, very fun road trips, maybe some bonding. Hawaii's not a great team. You can maybe win that one. I think USC, starting off with the Trojans at USC, is going to be a very rough environment for a new head coach. Go in and conquer. We will see. You got Sacramento State, Arizona, Oregon at home. Then you go at Colorado, home against UCLA, home against Washington, at Washington State, at Oregon State. Then you're home against Cal and Notre Dame. So you got that rivalry game against Notre Dame. I think that's going to be a tough one to win. Sacramento State should probably be a win. I think you can beat Hawaii. And hopefully you can snag a home game against your rival Cal. Right? And that's honestly, segue, I think that's honestly maybe one of the best clips that I've seen out of college football, right? That the game when the band is on the field. Just imagine that. Just close your eyes and imagine that, unless you're driving. Don't run off the road, but you get what I'm saying. Great game, would be huge for Troy Taylor in year one. Justin Wilcox is trying to hang on for everything he's got at Cal. He's trying to win the game. A lot of history behind that one, a great Pac-12 and college football rivalry that flies under the radar. Since both teams are just struggling a little bit, but that would be a big win. I think you can maybe find 3 or 4 wins in this schedule if you can somehow beat Washington State. They lost a lot in the portal, whether it's Francisco Mauigoa, whether it's DeCosmo from Vanderbilt. A couple, depth pieces are gone for the Cougars. This is tough. This is a tough situation to be in because Troy Taylor, he inherits a tough-looking team, right? He's coming over from Sacramento State, and it's not like he's inheriting a team that is, a 10-2 team, a 9-3 team from last season whose coach stepped down or went for another opportunity. The pressure really isn't on, right? The pressure is on to go out and win 3-4 games. I think he can do that. I think he's a good enough coach to get that done. Like I said, a lot of unproven guys on both offense and defense. He's got an offensive background. Maybe he can develop these younger quarterbacks. And E.J. Smith, like I said, his development is crucial, right? It's going to be a tough Pac-12. It's just not ideal, right? It's not a huge deal if they lose a couple games. I think it's about development. It's getting these guys reps, right? You play your former team in Sacramento State. That's an FCS team. Got to win that game, right? That's a step in the right direction. Beat Hawaii, beat Sacramento State, maybe play a couple tough Pac-12 games, go in there, mix it up a little bit, maybe pull an upset. Just prove that you're on the level and ready to compete, right? The recruits will roll in, hopefully. Maybe you can get some guys with the higher GPA to come in and play. Maybe you can get some portalers, as I like to call them, to come in and help your program out a little bit. Just not a ton of opportunity to compete here in 2023. As much as I hate to say it, I like Troy Taylor as a coach. I like the hire that Stanford made, bringing him in. And I like E.J. Smith as well. Obviously, his dad, Emmett, I loved him with the Cowboys. So we will see. The next team we're going to get to is an ACC team, but final thoughts on Stanford. I like them. Not a ton of opportunity to succeed. They're put in a tough position with the recruiting standards and with everything they've got going over there. But, yeah. Let's go to Blacksburg, Virginia. Let's go to the Virginia Tech Hokies. Now, this is another team. They're a team that, what is Virginia Tech not in the ACC going to look like? Where are the landing spots for Virginia Tech if they're not going to be in the ACC? A lot of you may be seeing the CUSA. A lot of you may be seeing the Sun Belt. I don't know. That seems a little high. No, I'm just kidding. SEC, Big 10, Big 12, if they stay together, the suitors for Virginia Tech, they're going to have to take a step up, right? Brent Pry's going to have to prove himself because it was a terrible year one. Absolutely terrible. 3-8, 1 conference win. Obviously, that last game got postponed or canceled against Virginia due to seriously unfortunate events and some really tough stuff going on with Virginia's program and their campus. Still a really tragic event, but they didn't get to play that game. Right? It's tough. They haven't had a winning record since 2019. They haven't had a double-digit win season since 2016 under Justin Fuente, where they went to the ACC championship game and narrowly lost to Clemson, and then kind of got screwed into playing in the Belk Bowl. So I will admit that's brutal. But now you bring in Brent Pry, who comes over from Penn State, pretty good defensive coordinator over at Penn State. He comes in, another player who played at Maryville College, which is like 3 hours east from here in Nashville. So he played some D3 ball, jumped up to play at Buffalo. Another defensive guy. The only thing that kind of, if I'm a Virginia Tech fan and you're listening to this show, or you're watching this clip on Twitter, or you're watching it here on YouTube, however you're consuming this information, it was Brent Pry's year one. I will cut him some slack. I will say he's got a lot of talent to work with. He brings in Ali Jennings from Old Dominion, who's an absolute dog. Hear that come out of my mouth. He's an absolute dog, right? He's that guy. You get 3 transfer wide receivers. You bring back Grant Wells, who's a transfer QB from Marshall. You've got a lot of production returning. You got a lot of guys with a lot of potential, and you bring in the 44th best recruiting class 2024, 38th best recruiting class transfer-wise in 2023. So it's not over until it's over for Brent Pry and Virginia Tech. I don't think that this is going to be a cellar dweller forever. Is Brent Pry going to be the guy to do the job? I don't know. Maybe that's a poll I create over on Twitter. Is he going to be the guy to do it at Virginia Tech? Right? You bring back 11 starters, 5 offensively, 6 defensively. You get 3 transfer receivers, like I said. Right? And you're going to be able to kind of jump back in with those 5, 6 starters on both sides of the ball and kind of fill the other guys in. Ali Jennings would be a huge get. 2 other transfer receivers, Grant Wells, returning running back Malachi Thomas. All those guys on offense are going to be a huge get. Not to mention basically 5 returning offensive linemen to help out Grant Wells. And I think that's one thing. If I had one thing that's kind of off the rails this episode, it would be the relationships and the chemistry that gets lost in the shuffle of just talking ball. Right? Bringing back 4 or 5 veteran experienced offensive linemen to protect Grant Wells. That was their guy last year that they protected, and now it's their guy this year. So they're in film together. They're at practice together. They're hanging out on campus together. They're going to parties together. They're doing all this fun stuff together. Now you got another year. You're on the same wavelength. If Grant Wells rolls out to the right, now you know he's going to roll out right. So I block here. I hold this block. He might roll back left. You're kind of on the same wavelength, right? You're kind of on the same wavelength, and I think that goes really, really, really slept on, right? That's Parker Clements. He was a spring offensive MVP at Virginia Tech. Got to keep an eye on his Hokie offensive line. You bring back Norrell Pollard. He had 92 total tackles at Virginia Tech. He's a defensive dog at the linebacker position. Had a pretty bad 2022, if I don't say so myself. Not saying I could get out there and do any better, but a tough 2022 nonetheless. But he will be projected starter. Now, we've done it for every team. Why not do it again? Let's go to Blacksburg, Virginia. Let's look at this schedule here for Virginia Tech. You're home against Old Dominion right off the bat. There's Ali Jennings' former team right off the bat. You're home against Purdue. You're at Rutgers, and you're at Marshall. So then there's Grant Wells' former team. Another, kind of a heart battle there. You're home against Pitt. You're at Florida State. Then you're home against Wake Forest and Syracuse. You visit Louisville and Boston College. You're home against NC State. And then you visit Virginia for that Commonwealth rivalry game, right? Big rivalry game between Virginia and Virginia Tech. Could be a win for either team. Toss up for sure. You have winnable games in there, right? You have winnable games with a guy like Ali Jennings. I think a lot of things are possible if Grant Wells can get him the ball. Grant Wells, 2,100 yards, 9 touchdowns last season. Did throw 9 interceptions, but hey. I think Old Dominion, Marshall, Pitt, Boston College, Syracuse, and Rutgers, and really even an unproven Purdue are all up in the air for Virginia Tech this season. There's 6-7 wins on the table. Come up and take it. Right? Come here. Here are your 6 and 7 wins. Come up, play well, and take it. Right? Are they going to do that is what we're unsure of. Right? They're going to have to set themselves apart from bottom tier ACC teams. right? You're going to have to set yourself apart from Syracuse, from Pitt, and Pat Narduzzi and Boston College. You have to win those games. You have to put yourself. Here's the bottom tier if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening and you're missing a great visual representation, if you're listening on Spotify, here's the bottom tier right here. Here's Virginia Tech teetering on that bottom line. They need to make the jump up to here. Not saying they have to win 8-9 games, but they need to set themselves up from that bottom, set themselves away from that bottom tier. What makes you want to go to Virginia, right? What makes you want to become a part of a program that isn't going to be able to go out and beat at Boston College and a Syracuse? And, in an interview done with Brent Price, there's a lot of people like the area. A lot of people come to, when they visit, they love the area. Maybe they do, but you got to win football games, right? You got to win football games. That's the expectation around here. And they're going to need contributions all around, not just saying it's Brent Pry, but you're going to need contributions from returners, those 5 returning defensive players. And you're going to need, defensive transfers to step up. That's the new age of college football. Transfers come in and produce immediately. That's the idea. So there's not a lot of expectation around this program, but the goal would be bowl eligibility. Not a lot of expectations for them. Media isn't talking about them. Not even a lot of Virginia Tech outlets are setting expectations for themselves. But if you're Brent Fry inside that locker room, right, the goal is to go out and win 6 or 7 games, right? Grant Wells doesn't have an excuse now. He's got returning offensive linemen. He's got 3 or 4 playmakers out wide, and you got a solid defense to work with, which is where Brent Pry thrives. You could get 3 out of conference wins. You could do your thing in conference. Maybe you're set up for a 5 or 6 win season. Maybe not. Right? Maybe not. But man, oh man, it has been quite the episode. I will say it's been fun. It's been quiet, man. It's been quiet without Ben, keeping me in check, keeping my bad takes in check, keeping my rambling in check this episode. But I do appreciate you listening. If you tuned into the 46th episode, if you're listening till now and you're not following either socials, please do it at @so_boy_sports on Twitter, at southern_boy_sports on Instagram. 5-star review over on Spotify would help. Like and subscribe over on YouTube as well. Man, a lot of golf to get to this week for me. I played absolutely terrible this past weekend. So hopefully you guys' golf careers going a little bit better than mine. We got Small Talk coming back in episode 47 because Ben will be back. Make sure to use code SBS15 at checkout for University Traditions, universitytraditions.biz. One of the sponsors of today's episode. We're really grateful for them. Rock your straight pride if you can. Use code Southern Boys at laststandhats.com. 10% off your purchase. That'll get you some shipping off. That'll get you some of the order total off. You want to go rep North Texas, Stephen F. Austin, Texas, UTEP, SMU, TCU. Go rep all that at laststandhats.com. They got golf polos. They got t-shirts, hats, kids, women wear, men wear, anything you want over there. Very versatile website. Go check them out. Use code Southern Boys. This has been the Cellar Dweller Special, the 46th episode of the Southern Boys Sports Podcast. Same time, same place next week. See you, boys.